Hello, this is Peter Marzano with Big 4 Sports, and today I'm going to give you my first of the 8 predictions for the conference quarterfinals in the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs. So let's start off with what we know is set in the Western Conference with your number 1 Chicago Blackhawks against your number 8 Minnesota Wild. Now, this is a matchup that virtually every 8 seed wants to avoid because it puts a lot of pressure on them, but at the same time, it puts a lot of pressure on the 1 seed, the team that just won the President's Trophy, the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, at this point, the Hawks are facing a situation that they have not been in since 1991, the last time they won a President's Trophy, and ironically enough, they were defeated by a team from Minnesota, the Minnesota North Stars, in 6 games. But I believe this time will have a different fate. The first thing you got to look at this matchup is you got to go offense to offense, and obviously, despite the addition of Zach Parise, Chicago has a distinct advantage. You have Jonathan Toews, you have Marian Hossa, you have Patrick Sharp, you have Brandon Saad, you have a giant plethora of players that virtually make up an all-star team, and that will definitely be too much for Minnesota to handle. Granted, Mikko Koivu, Devin Setoguchi, good role player. Zach Parise, he's your one offensive star in the team. But Minnesota's automatically outmatched offensively, and that's really going to hurt them in this series. Defensively, they're even a little outmatched there, too. Chicago Blackhawks, led by Duncan Keith, Brent Seabrook, and then on your second pair, bringing out guys like Nicholas Hjalmarsson, who could block shots, Johnny Oduya, who's been playing some good hockey, Nick Leddy, very fast defenseman, former Minnesota Wild prospect. Those are the type of guys that really bring out the speed and power that Minnesota really can't match. Granted, Minnesota may have the Norris Trophy winner on their side with Ryan Suter, who is an outstanding defenseman. He's really trying to make sure that he can keep a lot of the Chicago Blackhawks first and second lines in check, but at the same time, they're really looking at a problem on the defensive end, so that's why I give Chicago the distinct advantage there. Goaltending, on the other hand, is a little more even matched. For Chicago, you have Corey Crawford and Ray Emery. They have been playing great this entire year, almost overperforming what they've been doing in the past. So it looks like Corey Crawford is going to be at the helm for the postseason, as Ray Emery has a lower body injury that he may or may not be able to return for. On the other end of Minnesota, you have Nicholas Backstrom. Long has been able to prove himself as one of the best in the league. Josh Harding backing him up, another great goaltender. Minnesota has strong goaltending, and actually I give Minnesota the slight advantage here on goaltending. They really know how to keep it going in the blue paint. Always been able to shut down a lot of high-powered offenses such as Vancouver Canucks and the Edmonton Oilers within their own division. So I give Minnesota the very slight advantage on goaltending, even though Crawford has played outstanding this year to this point. Special teams is another thing where you got to look at it and say, well, what makes a difference? Chicago, one of the top penalty kills in the league, and great power play unit as well. Minnesota, they're a little more even matched there, but at the same time, Minnesota's always had a great penalty kill. They still have a very consistent penalty kill this year. I think it's pretty even matched on the end of special teams, giving Chicago the slight advantage just because you never know when that power play is going to come into shape with all the highly skilled players. Now, what's the verdict? Overall, I think the Chicago Blackhawks are just simply too good for a Minnesota Wild team that's in its first year of probably many of making the playoffs with a new set of players. It's very tough to see exactly how far it'll go, but I do know that Chicago is simply too good for the Minnesota Wild. Minnesota may steal a game or two, but I think that overall Chicago is just way too good. I think the Chicago Blackhawks are going to win this series at the United Center in Game 5. So I go Chicago in 5 over Minnesota. I think Minnesota will be able to steal one game, but overall, Chicago is just too firepowered on their offense, and it's just going to be too much for the Minnesota Wild to handle, regardless of their slight goaltending advantage. For my other predictions, make sure you keep us tuned on Big 4 Sports, which is b4sports.com. Thank you for watching.